Welcome to On the Economy video version. I have a returning guest today, my good friend and colleague Chuck Marr, who directs our tax analysis here at the Center on Budget and Policy Priorities. Now, readers of my blog know that I recently posted a blog on a paper by Chuck and his colleague Chai-Ching Huang, which I called the Tax Reform Trap. So let's start with Chuck. Tell us what the tax reform trap is, how lots of people fall into it, and how we can avoid it.
Yeah, thanks, Jerry. I think this is really the trap. I think it's a major risk, and I think it's one that the viewers really need to understand. If you think about it, we're going to go through pretty soon a major process again of trying to come up with a major deficit reduction plan, right? Everybody agrees that over the long term, budget deficits are unsustainable. So there's going to be a big effort to reduce those deficits, and taxes need to be a part of that. The risk of the trap is that actually going to take us in the tax reform trap is take us actually in the wrong direction. It's actually put into a bigger hole. If you think about it, most people think at least we need to stabilize the debt as a share of the economy by the end of the decade. That will take another $3 trillion. No, a lot of money. Right?
Over 10 years.
Over 10 years. That's a lot of money, right? And then if you think about tax reform, there's all these plans out there. There's the Romney plan, the Toomey plan. Bowles-Simpson had a plan. The Gang of Six had a plan. We all have something in common. They all try to adopt this mantra of lower the rates, broaden the base.
Okay,
right?
stop right
That's
there.
the mantra.
That's key to this. Every single tax reform plan, and you're in these debates even deeper than I am, but I debate this stuff all the time. They always start with, here's how we're going to do it. We're gonna lower the rates and we're gonna broaden the base. So that's key to understanding the tax reform trap, right?
Exactly. So think about it. You get this $3 trillion problem, and you start with the mantra: lower the rates. Well, what do all these plans have in common? They all lower the rates across the board, and that basically all those plans, all those rate cuts cost about $2.5 to $3 trillion.
So stop right there. If you're trying to raise a bunch of money, how does lowering the rates goes the other way?
Yes, it basically doubles the problem.
Okay.
So before you even start, you've doubled the problem.
Right.
And actually, you've given most of those rate cuts to high-income people, the way the math works. So all these plans, Romney, Toomey, they provide massive cuts to high-income people.
And just for our viewers, there's a good graph on this in their report, which we will link to. So go ahead.
Right. So you sort of falling into this trap. Right? And then you think, oh, but if I broaden the base, that's how I get to dig out.
Okay, so what does that mean, broaden the base?
We get rid of all these special interest loopholes. Right? And you sit around, you guys have a politician go out and talk about all these special interest loopholes.
For example?
Litter the whole tax code. And then they ask, well, what are those loopholes? Yeah. Oh, well, things like 401k plans or the mortgage interest deduction.
Wait. I like my 401k.
People are like, whoa, wait a minute. Those are very popular.
So one person's loophole is another person's very popular
And
plan.
a lot of those things should be reformed. But the point is, Jared, that they're very popular. They're very hard to change. And to try to raise $3 trillion just to break even is really the trap in a nutshell. Because you've dug this hole, and then you've tried to dig out, but then you go to dig out, and you realize that the things you're trying to cut are very hard to cut.
So if you get your fiscal feet caught in this trap, it sounds to me like you're going to end up with the low rates, but really not much on the base.
And remember where we started. The whole idea was to address these long-term deficits, right?
Right.
And you end up going in the wrong direction because you forgot the original goal, and you've made things worse, and you're stuck. You're in a trap.
So I think how do we avoid this? Is there a sequencing that helps?
I think you have to remember what the whole exercise is about, right? The whole idea is to reduce the deficit. So there needs to be first the idea that you have to raise a certain amount of money, and that should be set first.
Okay, let's stop. So when we're talking about tax reform, the first thing you do is set a revenue target.
Revenue before reform, right? Revenue comes first, because that's what it's all about, right? And then second, you need to figure out how is it that you're going to raise this revenue, right? Are you going to be able to trim the mortgage interest deduction? Are you going to be able to trim 401k plans, right? Then you have to trim that in a way that is progressive, right? We would say, because you have to think about how the inequality we had we got to make sure the tax code is made at least as progressive as it used
So
to be.
see if you, just to conclude here's how the sequencing that I wrote from your paper. So I want to make sure I got this right. 1, choose a revenue target, and it should be one that reliably reduces the deficit, as you've suggested.
Exactly.
Once the economy's back on track. No
Exactly.
deficit reduction until
No.
the economy's back on track. 2, figure out the rates and the base needed to hit that target.
Figure out the rates that are needed to either maybe higher, and the base broadeners, right, the closing of the loopholes to raise the money.
Okay.
Then, if you
okay.
have so much money left over,
Right.
you can start thinking about those rate cuts.
Okay, and that's pretty much the rest of the sequencing there. So I think that's a pretty handy-dandy description of the tax reform trap, what it is, and from my perspective, and probably yours as well, how to avoid it. That's what's most important. Thank you, Chuck.
Exactly.
And
Thank you,
thank
Jerry.
you to our viewers.